There's something unsettling about this thought. What if the life you're living right now isn't random? What if every delay, every rejection, every strange detour was part of a calculation your mind made long before you were aware of it? Not a conscious decision, not something you sat down and planned, but something deeper, something older, something quietly watching, and maybe even guiding. Because if that's true, then it means a part of you has been shaping your path without asking for your permission. And that realization can feel both comforting and deeply uncomfortable at the same time. Because suddenly, life is no longer just happening to you. It's happening through you. Carl Jung believed that beneath our everyday awareness, there exists a vast inner world, a world filled with memories, instincts, symbols, fears, desires, and unfinished stories. He didn't see the human mind as a simple machine. He saw it as something alive, something purposeful, something that constantly tries to bring you back into balance, even when you resist it. And that's where this idea begins to take shape. Your psyche is not passive, it is active. It is observing everything you do, everything you avoid, everything you suppress, and it is constantly adjusting, like a silent mathematician, running calculations in the background of your life, trying to solve something, trying to complete something, trying to make you whole. Now think about this carefully. Why do certain patterns repeat in your life? Why do you keep ending up in similar situations even when you try to change? Why do the same emotional triggers come back again and again, just in different forms? It doesn't feel logical. It doesn't feel fair. But maybe it isn't random. Maybe your psyche is recreating conditions that force you to face something you haven't yet understood. Not to punish you, but to reveal something to you. Jung once suggested that the things we avoid don't disappear. They go underground. And from there, they begin to shape our lives in ways we don't even notice. If you avoid vulnerability, you may find yourself feeling disconnected in relationships. If you suppress anger, you may attract situations that slowly build frustration inside you. If you ignore your need for meaning, you may feel empty even when everything seems fine on the outside. It's not coincidence, it's compensation. Your psyche is trying to restore balance. It's trying to complete the equation you left unfinished. And the longer you ignore it, the more intense the signals become. At first, it's subtle, a feeling that something is off, a quiet dissatisfaction, a sense that you're not where you're supposed to be. But then it grows, it becomes anxiety, restlessness, overthinking, a constant inner noise that you can't quite explain. And if that still doesn't work, life begins to intervene more directly. Unexpected endings, painful transitions, moments that shake your sense of identity, moments that force you to stop, to question, to feel. And in those moments, it can feel like everything is falling apart. But from Jung's perspective, something else might be happening, something deeper, something intentional. Because when your outer life breaks down, your inner world finally has space to speak. Jung experienced this himself. There was a period in his life when everything he thought he knew began to collapse. His professional relationships changed. His sense of certainty disappeared. And he found himself facing something he couldn't control, his own unconscious. Instead of pushing it away, he did something that most people are afraid to do. He paid attention. He listened to his dreams. He observed his thoughts without judgment. He allowed strange images and emotions to surface without trying to immediately explain them. And through that process, he discovered something powerful. The psyche doesn't communicate in words. It communicates in symbols, in patterns, in experiences, in emotions that don't always make sense, but feel significant. And if you ignore those signals, they don't stop. They evolve. They find new ways to reach you. This is why someone can achieve everything they thought they wanted and still feel empty, because the external life does not always reflect the internal need. You can follow the right path, make the right choices, do everything society expects from you, and still feel like something is missing. That feeling is not a flaw, it's a message. It's your psyche saying, this is not the full picture. There's more to you than this. There's something you haven't faced yet. And this is where the real journey begins. Not the journey of becoming better, but the journey of becoming real. Jung often emphasized that the goal of life is not perfection, it's wholeness, and wholeness requires you to acknowledge every part of yourself. Not just the parts that are easy to accept, but the parts you hide, the parts you denied, the parts you pretend don't exist. Because those parts don't disappear, they wait, they influence your decisions, they shape your reactions, they appear in your relationships, they show up in the things that trigger you. Have you ever had a reaction that felt too strong for the situation? Like something small made you feel deeply upset or unusually defensive? That's not random. That's something deeper being touched, something unresolved, something that your psyche has been trying to bring to your attention. And this is where many people get stuck. Because instead of asking, "What is this showing me?" they ask, "How do I get rid of this feeling?" They try to escape it, suppress it, distract themselves from it. But avoidance doesn't solve the equation, it complicates it. Because now the psyche has to work harder, it has to create stronger signals, more noticeable patterns, more intense experiences, until you finally stop and look. And when you do, something changes. Not everything, but something important. You begin to see your life differently. You begin to connect the dots. You begin to understand that your struggles were not just obstacles. They were directions, not always clear, not always gentle, but meaningful, guiding you towards something you hadn't yet integrated, something you hadn't yet accepted, something you hadn't yet become. This is especially true in moments of failure, because failure often strips away illusions. It forces you to confront reality, not the version you wanted, but the version that is. And in that confrontation, there is an opportunity, an uncomfortable but powerful opportunity, to ask yourself, what part of me is this revealing? Not, why did this happen? But, what is this trying to show me? Because when you shift the question, you shift your position. You're no longer just reacting to life. You're engaging with it. You're learning from it. You're participating in your own transformation. And that's where real change begins. Slowly, quietly, internally. You start noticing patterns you never saw before. You start recognizing behaviors that don't serve you. You start becoming aware of the roles you've been playing without realizing it. And that awareness is powerful, because you cannot change what you cannot see. But once you see it, you have a choice. And that choice is where freedom begins. Not complete freedom, but the beginning of it. Because you're no longer fully controlled by unconscious patterns. You're starting to bring them into the light. And that's what Jung believed transformation truly is. Not becoming someone new, but becoming aware of who you already are beneath the surface. And that process is not comfortable. It can feel like losing yourself. Because in a way you are. You're letting go of identities that were never truly yours, expectations you were trying to meet, versions of yourself that were shaped by fear or approval or survival. And letting go of those things can feel like grief. Even when it's necessary. Even when it's right, because the familiar, even when it's painful, still feels safe. And the unknown, even when it holds growth, feels uncertain. But this is where trust becomes important. Not blind trust, but a quiet understanding that something within you is working. Something is guiding, something is calculating, not perfectly, not instantly, but persistently. And that persistence matters, because it means your growth doesn't depend on your awareness alone. It's already in motion. Even when you're confused, even when you feel stuck, even when you think you're going backwards, there is something deeper still moving forward, still adjusting, still trying to bring you closer to yourself. And maybe that's what you're feeling right now. That quiet sense that something needs to change, that something isn't aligned, that there's more to you than the life you're currently living. And instead of ignoring that feeling, you can listen to it, not with fear, but with curiosity. Because that feeling might not be a problem, it might be a signal that your psyche is trying to guide you somewhere new, somewhere more honest, somewhere more real. And you don't have to figure it all out at once. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need complete clarity. You just need to start paying attention to your reactions, to your patterns, to the things that keep showing up in your life. Because those things are not random. They are part of the calculation. A calculation you didn't consciously make, but one that belongs to you. And the more you become aware of it, the more you begin to work with it instead of against it. And that's when life starts to feel different, not easier, but more meaningful, more connected, more aligned. Because you're no longer just drifting, you're participating, you're listening, you're evolving. And maybe that's the real message here. Not that your life is controlled, but that it's guided. Not by something outside of you, but by something within you. Something that knows you more deeply than your conscious mind ever could. Something that hasn't forgotten who you are, even when you have. So maybe today you don't need to fix everything. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to rush your way to clarity. Maybe you just need to pause, to reflect, to notice what your life has been trying to show you. Because the patterns are there, the signals are there, the guidance is there, quietly, patiently waiting for you to see it. And if this idea stayed with you, even a little, then don't ignore that. Sit with it. Think about your own life, your own patterns, your own unanswered questions, because the answers might not be as far away as they seem. They might already be within you, waiting to be recognized. And if you want to keep exploring this path, to understand yourself on a deeper level, there's more to discover, more to uncover, more to integrate. So take your time, stay curious, and when you're ready, continue the journey. Because the life you're living might just be leading you exactly where you need to go.